Many have asked the question of how much continuity matters in filmmaking. Recently, the debate has been further sparked by the negative reaction Kong Skull Island director Jordan Vogt-Roberts had towards a YouTube video by CinemaSins counting the quote-unquote sins in the film. In this video essay, I will ask when continuity matters in filmmaking, why it matters, and to whom. I will explore the opinions of script supervisors, the culture surrounding YouTube channels such as CinemaSins and Screen Rant with their series Everything Wrong With and Movie Mistakes, and the attitudes of successful filmmakers who have discussed the concept of continuity the most. Introduction. What is continuity in film, and what constitutes a continuity error? An audience's immersion in a film is dependent on a continuous reality created by the filmmakers. The channel's surfaced video on YouTube describes it eloquently.
The moment you have discontinuity and the viewers notice it, it jolts them up and throws them out of the story. They notice that the story isn't real because the reality you are trying to present to them is inconsistent.
Thankfully, most of the time we accept these mistakes very quickly because, as the channel Aeon Video explains,
our visual systems are optimized to highlight the information that is important for our comprehension of the activity.
Perhaps this is similar to when magicians are on stage. If an audience is successfully immersed in their story or actions, their minds will easily ignore small inconsistencies. These inconsistencies are common in film and television because scenes are very rarely filmed in chronological order. Sometimes only a fraction of a scene is filmed at one location, let alone filmed on the same day. Angela Allen, a seasoned script supervisor, describes how one scene in The African Queen was filmed in 3 different locations.
That sequence took place in 3 different places. When he's on the boat, Humphrey Bogart's on the boat, that was in the Congo. Where she's playing the organ in the church, that was in Uganda. And then, because Robert Morley was playing in the Little Hut in London at the time, we had to use a double, and then all the close shots with Robert Morley singing all had to be done back in the studio. So it was a question, of endeavouring to match it all up. And hopefully it came off, I don't know.
To clarify what I mean when I say continuity, I'll use this particular instructional video made at the Australian Film, Television, Radio School in the 1980s. Continuity can be separated into 3 categories: technical, the direction, amount and colour of light, the quality or perspective of sound, and physical perspective and spatial awareness; pictorial, which includes all props, costumes, hair and makeup; narrative, continuity of characters and storylines. This can also include historical inaccuracies such as padlocks in Gladiator which wouldn't have been invented yet, and the incorrect constellation of the sky on the date and time of the actual sinking of the Titanic, which, by the way, James Cameron corrected for the 3D re-release of the film. For the purposes of this essay, I will focus mostly on pictorial continuity due to us as humans mostly noticing small changes around the eyes, mouth and hands because of how we communicate. And I won't be including any examples from scenes in films with an unreliable narrator or reality such as Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, Synecdoche, New York, Fight Club, Inception, The Matrix or Birdman. This is because anything that one could normally consider an error in consistency can be argued that it's just the subjective perspective of the protagonist. So what happens when there's a pictorial continuity error? 1. You notice and it's kind of distracting. Small inconsistencies like in action sequences when broken things suddenly being unbroken, like the car in Commando, or the truck's windshield in Terminator, which was also the only error James Cameron fixed in the DVD release. He said he was only fixing that one because it was the only one that actually affected the story. The T-1000 breaks it again later to see better. Of course, destroying the suspension of disbelief can also be the filmmaker's intention, to break the 4th wall, like in films by Mel Brooks.
Sorry.
2. You might notice briefly, but you're too emotionally involved in the scene or performance to care, like Boromir's hand changing positions during his death in Fellowship of the Ring, or ropes tying Pippin's hands disappearing just before he cuts them off in Two Towers, or Frodo's wound changing sides in Return of the King. And the third, possibly most intriguing option is you don't consciously notice it and yet it affects you. Perhaps the most well-known and studied example of a director purposefully using discontinuity as a technique is Stanley Kubrick's The Shining.
Having found 2 examples of windows that shouldn't exist, I decided to go through the film scene by scene and draw maps of the overlook sets. It turns out that the hotel is full of impossible and illusionary designs used by Kubrick to disorientate the viewer and to communicate the illusionary nature of the Overlook Hotel.
So why are there so many videos online pointing out continuity errors in films? According to Film Riot on YouTube, it's normally one of 2 things.
One, It's people who have fun to find the continuity issues in the films that they love and watched a million times. Or two, it's just the people who want to have that I'm smarter moment because I'm the one that caught it, and they're distracting themselves from the film on purpose to try to find these things. Think about Martin Scorsese. His films, the continuity is all over the place, and it doesn't distract me at all the way that he edits, because he doesn't care so much about the little continuity, how much that cigarette is burnt down or not in each shot, because he's focusing on the emotional punctuation of every edit.
However, unlike stage magicians, most filmmakers aren't trying to trick or outsmart the audience. They're telling a story and asking the audience to believe for a moment that they are in a new world and to follow the protagonist's emotional journey. Jordan Vogt-Roberts, director of Kong Skull Island, criticized CinemaSin's video about his and other films because they weren't separating actual continuity errors or narrative issues from their own personal negative reactions to creative decisions made by the filmmakers, culminating in what Roberts would describe as just a mean-spirited attempt to be smarter than the logic of the film and assuming they've thought things out more than the filmmakers. So how much do filmmakers worry about continuity? There's the script supervisor on set in charge of minimizing continuity issues, plus every other crew member on set who might notice it, plus anybody who worked on post-production for the film. So why do they choose to include a shot which has an obvious error? In Avril Rowland's book, The Continuity Supervisor, she discusses common crew members and editors and directors' attitudes towards continuity. One drama director stated recently that nobody bothered about continuity anymore, and that it was solely for anoraks and nerds. There are continuity errors in almost every film due to the nature of how films are made. The film which has been declared online as the film with the most known continuity errors is Apocalypse Now. The director, Francis Ford Coppola, has previously spoken about not caring at all about continuity. So, whether it's multiple crew members and film lights seen in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, the air canister which visibly flips the chariot in Gladiator, or the crew member adjusting the velociraptor in Jurassic Park, the question of whether or not it's distracting depends entirely on the individual viewer's immersion in the scene, and in these cases, it's only noticeable or distracting if you're purposefully avoiding a suspension of disbelief, and that's hardly a fair way of criticizing any storytelling medium.